I think there has been stories where families tragedies happen, where characters within the families are trying to fix things and yet it ends in disaster. It's rare because stuff like that is usually super depressing as hell, but there is such a thing as a depressing storyline in ReZero, and unfortunately it has to do with the Astrea family. And my godly, each Astrea family member just does not get it easy. So unlike with the Reinhard video that I focus strictly on Reinhard and his thing, I want to focus on all the Astreas, which yes, that also includes Reinhard, but go watch his video if you want a little more in going about him specifically, because I'm not going to go too much into him, because this is more of how tragic is this entire family and how one single night quite literally destroyed the final chance at a possible fix-up for their damaged household. Although we could do Reinhard Astrea, we don't know much about him other than he was one of the three that was the key role in stopping Satella. So we're gonna go strict to Theresia van Astrea, because the big thing with her is that she was a normal girl. She was doing her own thing. She did have the problem with her divine protection of the death god, which means anytime she does actual wounds to someone, that wound will stay permanently open and will never heal. So there was a different issue with her. But upon receiving the divine protection of the Sword Saint, that sort of changed her trajectory of just being a hero that has to pick up the sword and fight for Lagunica. And unfortunately, this shattered her brother's dream, which was to be the next Sword Saint, who was going to be the predecessor or the successor of the uncle of Theresia. And because this kind of destroyed her happiness, flowers are important to Theresia because they kind of are the only thing that connect her to who she once was before becoming the Sword Saint. And even though she has tried to avoid the sword as best she can, and there's a little more on the EX novels in regards to this, especially with characters like Carol, who is like Theresia's best friend. The sad thing is that whenever her brother did try to comfort her and essentially looked like he wanted to take over her role in without the divine protection, similar to how Wilhelm essentially took over the role of picking up the sword for her, it is unfortunate that he definitely fought hard enough to make sure that none of the demi-humans reached her camp, but that was the last thing he could do for his sister. And every other family member unfortunately fell. One by one, they all fell. And that's the tragedy of it, is that being an Astrea is demanding of sacrifice. Whatever peace you want, whatever you want to do outside of the sword, it is unfortunate because it seems like every Astrea, including Wilhelm, even though he's an Astrea by name, technicality, it seems like the sword seems to bound them all. And this is especially relevant with Wilhelm.
Looks like I win. And as a proven weaker swordsman, you no longer have any reason to hold that weapon.
With Wilhelm, I think the one thing we can say is that he has always enjoyed the sword. That is all he had. And although Season 3 didn't cut into this a lot more, because this felt more of Season 1 Wilhelm's more personalized thing for his story, him watching Theresia, who, let's be real, the two fell in love when they first crossed paths, seeing her just demolish all the demi-humans right as he was gonna die and essentially be humiliated very clearly annoyed him. But it's almost suspected that he knew that she didn't want the life that she's in right now. That she has this duty that she needs to pick up the sword because that's what she is, the Sword Saint. It's a job that she cannot quit. So his dedication to beating her and besting her is both a declaration of love, as well as attempting to free her from that burden of having to be the sword of Lagunica. And it seemed like it did work, because after this moment, Wilhelm took a lot more of the responsibilities of being the sword, as his title goes, the sword devil, and that came with a lot of responsibilities, which led to the unfortunate demise of Theresia, which was due to the white whale. Although the white whale didn't necessarily kill Theresia, it was the fact that it came at a bad time, as another problem came up that Wilhelm could not ignore because of his duties, which was dealing with the ones that kidnapped the princess of Lagunica. It clearly separated the two and kind of forced the two to, well, hopefully fate bring them back together. But unfortunately, Theresia was bested in two different ways. One, she lost her divine protection of the Sword Saint, which didn't give her the firepower she needed to possibly beat the white whale. And then second, she confronted Pandora. And the thing about Pandora being there, it's suspicious as hell, because there's no way she just happened to be there. She has to have been connected in some way with her losing her divine protection. It is unclear, because, I mean, it isn't outright stated, but we can definitely infer that Pandora had something to do with it. Okay, so there is a confirmation that I was made aware of while making an edit on this video, and that is that Reinhard did in fact take Theresia's divine protection, like, knowingly, per se. And I don't know what the hell to think right now. This adds a little more layer, and I gotta now redo the entire goddamn Reinhard section. Now it's gonna be a little longer because of this little funny little thing. So make note of it. It's still original for the most part. I'm just adding a few things of tragedy, but it just adds more to the Astrea tragedy of things. But I'm still a little suspicious that Pandora was there, because she just so happens to be there at the exact time that Reinhard takes the divine protection. Nah, something's off. But anyway, let my past self continue on. Although this is Wilhelm's section, Theresia still suffers in the same fate that all of her life was decided by fate. And unfortunately, we add Pandora, who came in as one who rewrites reality, rewrites fate, and completely just rewrote whatever Theresia's path was going to possibly be, and became, well, dead and then an undead. Now, in Wilhelm's case, because of this loss, he completely blamed Reinhard. Heinkel attempted to protect Reinhard of this, but other things sort of pushed him to his limits, and see the asshole we meet. But for Wilhelm, having pushed away his grandson because he has now the divine protection that his wife used to have, is a correlation that he probably took away the divine protection, and that cost her Theresia's life. And because of this, Wilhelm not only separated himself from Reinhard, but also Heinkel, as his whole goal, ever since that moment of learning that the white whale took his wife, was hunting down the white whale no matter the cost, even if it kills him. And right after he actually manages to kind of be able to say that, yes, I do like flowers, and defeat the white whale, he's kind of aimless because he doesn't know what to do. And for sure, one of the things he wants to do is repair his relationship with Reinhard, as shown at the beginning of Season 3. Unfortunately, even though they were trying to reconnect and it seemed like it was possible, Heinkel comes in and that whole family drama happens. But then we have, obviously, the reveal of Theresia being alive, which makes him have to, first of all, he knows that his wife has been dead, and that the best person to take her down is him, because he was able to best her before. And although he does put up quite the fight, unfortunately, Heinkel's distraction, accidental distraction, causes him to falter and quite clearly fail at his job. And right as it seems like Theresia is about to strike down Heinkel, Reinhard appears. And he desperately is trying to convince Reinhard to not kill his Theresia. Unfortunately, that does happen because Theresia is fucking trying to kill everyone, but that's a separate point. And this is where Wilhelm's story kind of takes a little bit of a nosedive, not in a bad way, but in more of, after having to witness, like, have his final goodbye to Theresia, he does ask Reinhard if he feels remorse for this, wanting at the very least to hope that his grandson does have something of a feeling for what just happened. Maybe a bit of guilt to show that there's still someone in there, a person, not this sword saint that is just in his duties, that he has nothing outside of that. There's some kind of emotion still in him, and unfortunately that's kind of taken away. And the second that Reinhard says that, no, I don't regret it, that's the moment that Wilhelm cut off Reinhard van Astrea from his family and is just acknowledging him as the Sword Saint. Before going off on his own, even though Heinkel's trying to help his dad, he just wants to be alone. Because at this point, it's back to how it was before. Separating from everyone and just disconnecting because nothing else matters at this point. Because for sure, Theresia van Astrea is completely dead.
I gotta say, I'm not liking the nasty look that you're sending my way right now, kid.
For Heinkel, now I understand that his introduction just makes him come off like a complete other ass, and he is an ass, but I feel like there's a lot of context that one needs to understand. As I said in the last section with Wilhelm blamed Reinhard for Theresia's death. Heinkel quite clearly tried to protect his son, as is shown a little more in the books, but unfortunately, he also has his own issues of his wife being in a coma-like state, similar to Rem's state, but not similar because they can still remember her. Then you have, obviously, him arguing with his father, and then the fact that his son had essentially taken away the Sword Saint from him, and him feeling completely inferior. All of this eventually collapsed on him because it was so much to handle on his own. And obviously, alcohol, we all know what alcohol does. It is not good for you, and it'll put you in the worst state of mind. So yeah, Heinkel has been kind of going downhill, and having joined the Priscilla camp is only to secure a chance to get the dragon blood to help his wife awaken from her slumber. And yes, throughout this season, he is a complete dick, and there isn't a lot of good qualities, unfortunately, because him still, like, capturing Felt and using her as a hostage to force Reinhard to protect them both. Well, because he's going to protect Felt, and if he's the one holding her hostage, then it's by him on proxy. And then obviously getting Beta makes him look like a dumbass. I think him seeing his mother kind of put a lot of trauma in him, because he was not ready to fight his mother to begin with. Not to mention that the whole white whale thing, he was supposed to go and fight the white whale, but he didn't. He was too much of a coward to do it, and Theresia did it on his place, so there's guilt there. As well as the fact that seeing his father fight his mother is not a good thing, and seeing his father, who he rarely sees lose, if ever, lose, is probably an interesting set of emotions. So yeah, he collapses because he can't do much. He's not as skilled as a fighter like his parents. And yeah, I mean, he's confused because he thought his mother was dead. Like, so many things are rushing in his mind. And it's understandable why he is in complete distress at that point. And yeah, although he was saved by his son, clearly seeing his son take out his mother is not exactly good for one's health. And yeah, him coming out with an outburst. I know people hate Heinkel. Like, I completely understand it because he's been such an ass. However, one must understand that Heinkel is suffering through a lot, and seeing this did not help him. If anything, it reminded him of his previous trauma. And yeah, he was insulting Reinhard and saying that he's going to try to get rid of the Sword Saint from him. But if you think about it, the Sword Saint title has been a curse for any Astrea member who's had that title under them. Theresia suffered through it. Obviously, Wilhelm took care of it, but the problem comes down to Reinhard having it, and he is no better than anyone else because he has no real relationships outside of Felt and Subaru. And even then, the thing is, he may be the strongest, but he has so many limitations, so many things that he can't really do, that this would be a blessing if he does manage to get rid of the Sword Saint title and can be more than the sword, which was what Theresia wanted for Reinhard. Even after Reinhard had left, he definitely wanted to help his father, but his father pushed him away. Obviously, this causes him to be more in suffering because he wants to help his family, and he can't. He's literally useless. And this whole scenario only just brought the worst of everyone, which unfortunately, it just completely destroyed any hope he had to helping his father maybe reconnect, or maybe try to help his son in some odd way that isn't straightforward for an audience, like maybe get rid of that Sword Saint title and so he can live a normal life. But you know, it's just the tragedy of Heinkel is that he is put in such a position that unfortunately he's always going to feel useless.
You are a true hero, and that is all you can be.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a redo on this section because of the new information. So Reinhard van Astrea had a conscious feeling, or it was conscious, whenever he took Theresia van Astrea's divine protection of the Sword Saint. This is big because his doing here essentially did the domino effect of sort of screwing over the family, which is already tragic on its own. But I think the bigger tragedy is the fact that he did this under the pretenses of wanting to help his father, and also the fact that having that Sword Saint divine protection automatically sets you on a path of destruction. I say that because for Theresia van Astrea, being the sword essentially is the full duty of the Sword Saint. And Reinhard got it at such a young age that he never got to enjoy his childhood properly. Considering the fact that it skipped Heinkel and went straight to him was also a bit suspicious. But there is so much to really go over now with this new context. But because I have the Reinhard video, I'm only going to make 1 to 2 main points for this video. 1, Reinhard having so many divine protection, he being quite literally busted as hell, that they have a whole Reinhard law, is because his power is so crazy, it literally can be a walking nuke. Like, if another country dealt with Reinhard might wipe them out. Well, might, in the case of, depending on context. But that's the problem. That's why he's only strictly in Lagunica and will only go outside if there's, like, a specific need for it, considering EX4. But the main point of this is the fact that him getting that divine protection essentially set him on a path that he has to be this monster, this thing for the protection of Lagunica. Like, he is the sword, and that's all he can be. Or I guess in Puck's own words, he is a hero, and that's all he can ever be. Now, the second point is that this mindset, as well as whatever his perspective could be in the matter whenever he fought against Theresia, is, well, she's dead. The undead shouldn't be alive, and he wipes her out. However, the animation in season 3 showing this little thing is sort of symbolic in a way that he completely cuts off his Astrea ties. Like, doing this in front of his father and grandfather would obviously lead into issues. Especially when you have Wilhelm begging Reinhard not to kill Theresia, even though Theresia is actively trying to kill him. But not only that, he was fine with his assertion of what he did when questioned. And this kind of shows that Reinhard, outside of Felt and Subaru, he is going to be diligent on what he's gonna do. And if he sees someone be like genuinely evil, I mean, mostly he will take them out, especially if he views it as necessary, which is tragic in this case because I assume that he didn't want to take out his own grandmother. However, he is bound to his duty as the Sword Saint of Lagunica, that any threat to Lagunica has to be dealt with. And since Theresia's body was used with the Witch's Cult, it needs to be taken care of. This clearly does a lot of damage. This is essentially the main point. Whenever Wilhelm asked him, do you feel bad about it? It's to see, is there some remorse, something to say that Reinhard isn't just completely a person void of emotions. But considering that his answer was, no, I'm fine with what I chose, this is the right path, Wilhelm calling him Reinhard van Astrea and essentially being like, yeah, I was wrong, like essentially kind of admitting it in a sense, is not necessarily an admission of guilt. It's an admission that, okay, I was wrong on the sense that you could be redeemed in my eyes because now you actually killed Theresia. So I am done. I am done trying to repair our relationship of grandson and grandfather. It is just, you are the Sword Saint, I'm the Sword Devil. It is what it is. And then obviously Heinkel as well, like he's just mad at everyone. But I mean, watching his mother die and being completely for sure, that would traumatize anyone. So it is unfortunate for Reinhard in this case, because he is doing what he needs to do because he was taught like that since he became the Sword Saint at such a young age. So anything of emotions and connections had to have been thrown away. Which, I mean, it sucks for Reinhard because he genuinely wants to make connections, which is why his relationship with Subaru is interesting. Subaru sees him not as the Sword Saint. He does see him overpowered here and there. However, Subaru does see him like a really true friend, ignoring all of the stuff regarding his power. And Felt can see through him and constantly corrects him if he needs to be, corrected in how he's acting. But as I said, this was the catalyst to destroying the Astrea family. Although this arc has shown a lot of the highs, being that they were able to push back the Sin Archbishops, the Witches Cult, they were able to defeat 2 of them, with one of them being the most strongest Sin Archbishop being killed, and the other one being captured for sure, because Priscilla couldn't finish the job since Sirius got extremely lucky. It is unfortunate that this was also the day that the Astrea family was destroyed in its fullest, and that nothing after this point can be fixed for that. And that's honestly the tragedy of the Astrea family. Such a curse of the divine protection of the Sword Saint, that whoever has that divine protection will unknowingly be thrusted into fate that they will forever have to pick up the sword, and that is all they are. They can only be a hero, and that's anything they can ever be.